Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you another video, and today we're going to be starting a series that I actually had on the channel earlier in the fall of last year, but I took it down since it really wasn't doing all that well at the time. But after having the votes for what series you guys wanted to see next, a lot of you guys really want me to bring this back, so you could say this is a reboot of sorts. I mean, I only did like 2 parts of the story before I canceled it, but we're going to be redoing What If Naruto Was Trained by Doctor Strange, Naruto Mystic Adventures Part 1. Now, for this story, I'm going to be taking a similar approach to how I did What If Spider-Man Was in ReZero, in the sense that this version of Naruto is going to be trained by Doctor Strange from the MCU, and I'm going to try to line everything up timeline-wise so that it all makes sense and tells a cohesive story. Now, for those of you who might be wondering, will this factor into anything that the MCU does in the future? Yes, it will. Now, it'll be up to you guys whether or not you want the Doctor Strange movie, the Multiverse of Madness, to play a part in this series. It can if you want it to, and I'm thinking about some creative ideas that I can do with that, but that's something that we'll get into when we go down the line. Anyway, this is the final video for the week, and this is going to be coming out a bit earlier, Saturday morning. This is actually being recorded in the evening time, but I have a few things I need to work on. So this, by the time this comes out, it'll come out a bit early Saturday morning, maybe around 4 a.m. if you will. Since we are going to be getting hit with snow, I don't know how that might affect the electricity, so who knows, my power might be off. So this video is just being recorded ahead of time so that you guys can enjoy it, and I'm going to be getting it out to you guys a lot sooner so that just in case in the event that I don't have power, you guys will at least have the story. But anyway, thank you to everyone who supports PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. As always, I cannot do it without you. You make the channel grow, you make the core grow. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. It had been around a year following the events of the first Doctor Strange movie. Doctor Strange had been making strides in his training, along with his assistant / teacher in Wong. Strange was training and preparing himself following the death of his mentor, the Ancient One, and with Baron Mordo leaving from the Academy. And after his fight with Dormammu, Doctor Strange steadied himself in the training of the mystic arts to prepare himself to be able to protect the Time Stone, as well as his world from any and all threats. During his time in his training, Doctor Strange improved very quickly and was a very studious individual. Even before his training in the mystic arts, this was something he was known for. Among many of his duties and many of the creatures that he ended up facing, one group that proved to be a bit of trouble were these 3 creatures known as the Mindless Ones. Strong and powerful beings who, as their name implied, were absolutely without a mind, devoid of any thinking or thought. They moved around aimlessly. This had caused a bit of a disturbance in the Sanctum Sanctorum, as the 3 had managed to run inside and be a bit rampant. Wong and Strange attempted to take them down as quickly as possible, but in the event of their fight, an accidental incantation was opened and a portal was created, and the 3 escaped. While Wong focused on cleaning everything up, Strange would go after them immediately. As he did so, and the portal opened, we would then find ourselves in a world rather familiar, but far different from the world that Doctor Strange had known. This was the world of Naruto. It was actually outside the forest of Konoha, about a year and a half prior to the start of the series. As a young Naruto sat in the forest all alone, still beating himself up over how he failed pathetically in the academy. He would be minding his own business when the mindless ones would descend upon him. Naruto attempted to run and escape as quickly as he could, but the mindless ones proved to be a lot faster and stronger than what he was expecting. It seemed as though he was about to be crushed instantly when, yellow-like tendrils would snap away at the mindless ones, binding and holding them in place, before Doctor Strange would quickly seal them away. He was shocked to think that they could have gotten so far, and he had no idea what world he had been in, though as he looked around in his surroundings he would see a young boy, dressed in an orange jumpsuit with a scarf, wearing goggles on his head. He would walk over to the blonde boy and ask if he were alright, and Naruto would assure him that he were fine. But he would ask who he was and how on earth did he have a jutsu like that? Doctor Strange would turn around at the name of jutsu, since what he used definitely wasn't jutsu, but he wondered why the kid would think that. He stopped for a moment and asked him where he was exactly. Was he in Tibet, some type of foreign country? But no, Naruto would explain that he was actually in Konoha. This definitely caught Doctor Strange's interest, mainly because he had never heard of a Konoha. He wondered what type of world he was in the first place, although he didn't think so for too long, as for him his only main focus was to catch the mindless ones and to teleport them somewhere where they wouldn't do any more harm and damage. And with that, he was preparing to leave rather quickly, but Naruto kept pestering him as he had more questions. Strange tried to tell him to get away, telling him to go home to his parents, but this actually would make Naruto pause for a moment, since he would explain that he didn't have parents. He had been an orphan his whole life. Doctor Strange normally tried to be a bit cold and distant, but now after hearing that, he knew he'd have to stay and comfort the boy. Although as he did, he could sense that there was something inside of Naruto, a dark and malevolent force. He wondered if the boy knew anything about this, but when he asked him, Naruto wasn't sure what he was talking about. Deciding that they might need to check on this, he would open a portal and take him to the Sanctum Sanctorum, where Wong would be, after he had finished cleaning up following the Mindless One's attack. Wong would immediately ask just what was Strange doing, and why he brought a boy from another world. He would warn him that doing something like this could be very dangerous, but Doctor Strange would assure him that this was for a good reason. He just had something that he wanted some help checking out. They would sit Naruto down and ask him what he wanted to eat. They would give him a bowl, and the bowl could create anything that Naruto desired. All he had to do was think it. Naruto thought that they were just pulling his leg, although he decided if this was true, then maybe he could. Naruto would take a deep breath and he would think to himself of having a large extra helping of pork miso ramen, cooked in the style of Ichiraku ramen. As he opened his eyes, he could smell the steam coming from the bowl, and instantly he saw that the meal that he wanted, down to the last detail, was right in front of him. Naruto looked at Strange and Wong, absolutely amazed, before he would start to devour his meal without hesitating for a moment. And just when he thought that the meal was finished, he wished he could have had more, and the bowl would refill once again with more of the delicious soup. This was pure heaven for Naruto. However, as Naruto was eating, Doctor Strange and Wong would be taking a reading of the boy. Sensing his energy, they could tell that he was definitely powerful, and that they could also sense this malevolent force inside of him. They would ask Naruto more about his world and where he had come from. And Naruto would inform them that he came from a world where ninja reigned supreme. In a sense, this was more of an Asian style based world in their mind, to think that shinobi were the primary fighters of this universe. Naruto would explain that ninja used the ability to harness chakra, and in doing so, they could use it in 3 different forms. The principles, basically, in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. Naruto would give a brief rundown of what these were. Ninjutsu and their abilities, usually being in the forms of elemental abilities or in transformation, substitution, or the clone jutsu, one that truly gave him the most problems. There was genjutsu, but he didn't have an affinity for it, but this was the ability to cause illusions. And as for taijutsu, well, that was just hand-to-hand combat. For Wong, he was able to figure out that chakra in their world wasn't really that different from the magic that they used. If you had to think about it, it was like a different variant of a style, which they had plenty of. In their world, there were martial artists in Kung Lung that used Qi as their source of energy. The Asgardians were known for having their own form of magic, known as Asgardian magic. This was the kind that Loki, the god of mischief, used. There was magic from the Dark Dimension that those who were tempted by Dormammu used, as seen from the events of Doctor Strange 1. And there was Wanda of the Avengers. While little was known about her, it was believed that she used a form called Chaos Magic. And as for they themselves, well, they used Eldritch Magic. However, the main concern would be the dark force within Naruto. As they went deeper in conversation, they would pick up on things that Naruto spoke of. He would tell them of his birthday, although he didn't know anything of it since he was an orphan. But when he brought up the event of the Nine-Tailed Fox attack, and they realized that the Nine-Tailed Fox attack correlated with the night of his birth, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the two must have gone hand in hand. And as Wong and Doctor Strange would take a deeper reading, they could feel something within him, something evil and feral, like that of the Nine-Tailed Fox spirit. As they sat Naruto down, they would explain to him what they had found, that the Nine-Tailed Fox, as he described, that had attacked their village, it was actually inside of him. This would definitely catch Naruto off guard, as this wasn't something he was expecting, and he had a little bit of a mental breakdown at that moment. He couldn't believe that the Nine-Tails was inside of him. Was he actually the Nine-Tails? Although as he lifted his shirt and everyone could see the seal on his stomach, Wong, even he was able to realize that that was a seal, most likely used to keep the fox in place. As Naruto would worry and panic, Wong would explain to him that he wasn't the Nine-Tails, and that a seal like this was most likely used to keep Naruto as the jailer for the Nine-Tailed Fox. He would liken it to the mystic items that they use. In a sense, it was allowing them to channel these powers, since it was too strong for them to do naturally, bringing up the Staff of the Living Tribunal, as well as many other artifacts within their possession. In a way, Naruto was a lot like this, both Wong and Strange realizing that, in that regard, Naruto was essentially a living weapon. However, they wouldn't allow him to let his spirits be gotten down, assuring him that he could rise above this and be something more. Of course, Strange could see that within the young man, someone who had never had any guidance or teaching in his life could surely use it. It was a shame. If they had seen what he truly was and knew what he was capable of, then why on earth were they treating him so bad? Why wasn't anyone helping him? Being and treating him like an outsider, that wouldn't do the boy any good. If he were going to be any way of protecting himself, then he was going to have to be taught and learn how to overcome such things. After thinking it over, Wong and Strange would decide that they would train him. After all, Strange was still in a bit of a training phase himself, and they figured if Naruto was able to learn and master these abilities, since his world effectively didn't have a Sorcerer Supreme, he could become the Sorcerer Supreme of his own world, although they would warn that there were dangers in using magic, that when they used it, it was essentially borrowed power from powerful beings, and that Naruto needed to be careful as the more he learned, the stronger he would become, but also the more dangers he could potentially attract. After Naruto, now seeing that he was being given a chance, he would look at them, determined more than ever to not fail them. And with that, they would set up a schedule. They learned that Naruto was being trained in an academy, so they decided to work around it, and whenever Naruto wasn't in the academy, they would make a certain time period where they would train and bring Naruto. It was usually within a private room of the Sanctum Sanctorum. After all, they didn't want Naruto accidentally running around in New York where he could get lost, a world where he knew nothing or any of the customs or those things. And as such, Naruto's training would begin. A brief rundown of the things that Naruto would learn. First and foremost, Naruto would work on meditation. This helped him with his mystic arts training, as well as helping with his chakra control, improving him in skills such as his transformation jutsu, as well as the substitution jutsu. In terms of combat, Naruto never really was adept at any one style of taijutsu, so instead Wong and Strange would help him, giving him fundamental training in 4 martial arts: Judo, Wing Chun, Kenjutsu, which was a form of weapon and sword arts, and Tai Chi. When it came to Naruto's mystic arts training, while he learned in a bit of an unorthodox style, Naruto was definitely a quick study, and was definitely able to adapt. They focused purely on using the Eldritch magic teachings, believing that this was the best way for him, learning similar to the ways that Dr. Strange was taught. Among the many things that he would acquire, the primary focus would be in these 6 principles. First would be Eldritch magic manipulation. This allowed Naruto to convert his chakra into tangible constructs of energy. For Naruto, the constructs he preferred to use were shuriken and kunai, and usually any other type of ninja tool, while Strange preferred to use things such as whips and more accustomed Middle Eastern swords. This was a reflection of Naruto's fighting style and from where he had come from. In particular, as well as becoming good with the sword, Naruto also became decently fluent with a bow staff, learning how to use it in a more defensive style. The next thing he would learn would be the Shield of Seraphim, a magical blockade of energy used as a shield in order to protect him from harm. These are the shields that Dr. Strange used to block various attacks. Next were the Chains of Kraken, constructs that were used to bind strong enemies in powerful chains. Naruto seemed to be the most adept at this technique, and seemingly were able to unlock chains of his own. While these were still the Chains of Kraken, the reason why he was able to use this one so effectively was because his body had the affinity for using the Uzumaki chakra chains. So you could say that in a way, he had basically found another way of learning this ability. You could say it was kind of like Naruto taking a back road, but ultimately he got to the same destination. Although now, instead of the Uzumaki chakra chains, these were the Chains of Kraken. Next was a jutsu that Naruto would find to be very useful, and one that could serve on 2 folds. This was called the Images of Icon, except it had another variant, the Illusions of Icon. Similar to the clone jutsu and the shadow clone jutsu, these worked in two different formats. The images of Icane were a lot similar to the shadow clone jutsu, creating tangible clones that could be used in combat, while the illusions of Icane merely created clones that could be used for distraction, essentially mirages or similar to the clone jutsu technique. Next were the vapors of Voltor, a fog that could obscure one's vision, a technique very similar to Zabuza's hidden mist jutsu. Next were the winds of Watum. Naruto had a great affinity for this technique. This could have been akin to the fact that his chakra nature, unknown to him at the time, was wind, but this allowed him to create strong bursts of wind that he could fire at his enemies. These were the main spells that Naruto would be taught, and he would come to learn and master them over time. As he did so, while Naruto was also training under Dr. Strange, he still had to attend his academy. Although Iruka would notice that Naruto often slept a lot in class, he thought at first that he was slacking, but slowly but surely, he would come to understand that Naruto was actually training. When it came to Naruto all in all, not only did he get training in combat and in the mystic arts, but Dr. Strange was also someone who was a good person to talk to. He slowly began to be seen as a bit of a father figure in a way. Whenever Naruto was dealing with something personal, he would talk to him about it, getting life advice. In doing so, he was actually able to get over his crush on Sakura, since he would talk to Strange about it multiple times, and Strange allowed him to see things from a different perspective. Instead of focusing on a girl that wouldn't give him the time of day, why not wait and look around? Actually keep his eyes open and see a girl who could be nice to him and like him for him. It might be subtle, but he'll surely find it someday. As he did so, Naruto would slowly not bother Sakura as much in class, and after a while, there was someone that he thought might have caught his interest, but he wasn't sure, although he remembered to keep his eyes open. In doing so, Naruto learned to conduct himself better and be a lot more sociable. He cut back on his pranks, mainly because he was too tired to try to pull them off anymore, but he started to be seen as more respectable. And when it came to his training in school, it was easy to see that the fruits of his labor were paying off, as when it came to how he performed, in his leaps and bounds above what he used to be. He was the dead last, but yet in less than a year, he had seemed to go from zero to hero, most notably with the prodigy of the class, Sasuke Uchiha, someone who seemingly was always superior to him in every way. What seemed to be a fight that Naruto could never win, they now became a lot more even, forcing Sasuke to have to improve and stay on his toes, since Naruto was always capable of catching him off guard now. And then finally, when it came to his clothes, Naruto decided not to wear his jumpsuit anymore. He instead would get clothes a lot similar to Doctor Strange, the one from the MCU. Except instead of his cloak being blue, theirs instead would be orange. He would still have black pants, and rather than wearing boots, he would wear black shinobi sandals, similar to the ones that he wears in Naruto Shippuden. Naruto had seemingly changed over the span of time, and everyone could see it. As the time was coming to an end, and the Genin graduating test was on the horizon, Naruto had learned the basics from Strange and Wong. Of course, there was plenty more that he could learn over time, but they couldn't always dedicate all their time to training him, as Strange and Wong had other duties and responsibilities. So this was going to be the last time they might see each other for a while. However, before leaving, as a gift for doing so well, Strange and Wong crafted something for Naruto. It was a sling ring, much like the ones they used, but it was a lot different. While theirs were gold and allowed them to travel not just around the world, but across various times and space and dimensions, the one that Naruto had gotten was made a custom for him. It was silver, and it was made with a special tether, a tether to his own world. It would allow him to open portals in basically any part of his own dimension and in his own world, but he wouldn't be able to travel outside. After all, they didn't want him accidentally getting lost in another dimension or another part in space for whatever reason. So this sling ring was only effective in the Naruto world. And like the other rings, it could only take him to places that he had already been, so he would have to keep that in mind whenever he used it. Naruto would be very thankful for his gifts, and he would thank Dr. Strange for everything that he had done for him. At first, he thought that he wasn't going to have a future as a shinobi. He knew that he was the dead last amongst everyone else, but now he felt like he really had structure. He had a future. Strange would tell him that he were proud of the efforts that he had made, and maybe if things had been different, he would have been a suitable candidate to become the Sorcerer Supreme someday. As for the power within him, Strange would tell him that above all else, to always remember that he was Naruto, he was not the Nine Tails, and that if he kept working hard and applied himself, he could show the people the same thing that he and Wong already saw. And with that, Naruto would bow to both of his senseis as they opened a portal to his apartment and he returned home, Naruto waving at them as they said their goodbyes. About a few minutes after they had done so, another portal would open out of nowhere, and falling from it would be a battered and beaten Bruce Banner, aka the Incredible Hulk. Once they had helped him and nursed him back to health, Banner would awaken and warn them. The Mad Titan, Thanos, was collecting the Infinity Stones, and he was on his way. Unknown to Strange and Wong at that time, they wouldn't see Naruto for another 5 years. Naruto back home would rest and get some sleep, as the next day, the Genin graduating test would take place. For Naruto, he knew that he was going to pass, but as for the teachers, they had no idea what Naruto was going to pull up his sleeve. Even though he had improved in many areas, the clone jutsu still wasn't one of them, but they noticed that didn't seem to bother Naruto at all. It seemed as though he knew something that they didn't, but they would have to wait and see what was going to happen. Naruto would go through his progressions. He would perform the substitution jutsu and the transformation jutsu just fine. But the time came for the clone jutsu, and here was where they would see the change. Instead of using the clone jutsu, Naruto would make his hands into a different sign. He would chant the illusions of Icon, and as he did so, 3 clones would appear behind him. For Iruka and Mizuki, there were many questions. While Naruto had made clones, exactly like the clones they were expecting, he didn't use ninjutsu to do it. He didn't use the typical hand signs. This was something entirely different. But how he had gotten to this point, they didn't really know. For Mizuki, he wanted to fail him instantly, but Iruka would pass him, giving him a headband, because he had to make clones, and he did so. But Naruto had been changing so much, and what his clothes were wearing and his skills, they wanted to know how he was improving the way he was. And with that, Iruka would take Naruto to the 3rd Hokage himself, as there were many questions that needed to be asked about Naruto and his abilities. Once they were in the Hokage's office, Naruto would be sat down as the 3rd Hokage would speak to him. The third Hokage would tell him that he wasn't in trouble or anything, but that they wanted to know how he was doing what he did, where he gotten his training from. Naruto was a bit nervous, but he trusted the third Hokage and Iruka sensei since they were nice to him. He took a deep breath and he told them that what he was about to say might sound absolutely crazy, but it was the truth. They would nod in response and Naruto would explain everything. He would explain meeting Doctor Strange, being taken to another world, and that for over a year and a half, on top of him going to the academy, he would leave periodically and train with Wong and Doctor Strange, learning in the mystic arts. While this sounded completely out of fan fiction, in the world that they lived in, this might not have been impossible. Naruto would also explain that magic and ninjutsu wasn't all that different. They were of different sources, but they were like different roads that all led to the same destination, so to speak. While Naruto would be admonished for doing something so dangerous, they couldn't deny the results. From what Naruto was able to display, his skills were on par with that of many of their elite shinobi, and he was able to use it by doing and having a different source of power. Although Naruto would promise that if the next time Strange ever showed up, then he would have him be introduced and meet with them. They agreed and Naruto would be allowed to pass, although unknown to Naruto. The events of Avengers Infinity War would be underway, and Naruto wouldn't see Doctor Strange for a while. In the meantime, Naruto had passed and was now able to go out and celebrate. He went to Ichiraku Ramen and ordered himself a special meal, although as he did so, he would notice the Jonin of the village leaving and moving about in a panic. As he did so, Naruto would see Iruka and he would ask him what happened. Iruka would explain that a student from the academy, someone who had failed, had stolen the scroll of sealing from the Hokage, and they needed to get it back as soon as possible, because if they didn't, the consequences could be dire. Naruto would go to help, and he would look throughout the village. Eventually going into a forest area, he would see a young boy with the scroll. He had been running for so long, he wasn't sure of what to do. As Naruto went to the young boy, he would ask him why he had done something like this, as he used the chains of Krakon to be able to hold and bind him in place. The young boy would explain that Mizuki Sensei had told him that if he had done this, then he could make Geni. For Naruto, his training with Doctor Strange had made him more perceptive. He wasn't as stupid as many people would think he is. He wasn't a genius or anything like that. He wasn't a Shikamaru. But at the very least, he had decent common sense, and from that he could tell that this was a trick. Mizuki Sensei would then appear above them, congratulating Naruto on figuring out the truth. He tried to scare and intimidate Naruto, but Naruto wasn't having it. His training had made him a lot more stronger and a lot more wiser. He didn't give in or feel sorry for himself, like Mizuki wanted him to. Mizuki even went as far as to try to expose Naruto and break him mentally by telling him that he was the Nine-Tailed Fox. But Naruto would rebuttal that he wasn't the Nine-Tailed Fox, just the jailer for the Nine Tails. This would absolutely catch Mizuki off guard, as he had no idea that Naruto would already know about who and what he was, but that didn't matter to him. Iruka would arrive not too long after, telling Mizuki not to go up too far, but it was too late. Mizuki was already making his way towards Naruto to take him down. However, Naruto would be prepared for Mizuki. As he threw a large shuriken towards him, Naruto would summon a shield, the Shield of Seraphim. Using the magical shield, he would block the large shuriken with ease. As Mizuki would create space and go in for the attack, Naruto would summon the images of Icon to create clones of himself. The clones would effortlessly move around Mizuki, outnumbering him. Mizuki then realized that these were more clones than what he was expecting, but he assumed that they were just illusions. However, he was wrong. For Naruto had used the images of Icon, not the illusions of Icon. And when he didn't think to brush off the illusions, their fists connected, beating him senselessly into the ground. Naruto would then create the chains of Kraken, using them to bind and hold him in place, as he would bring the scroll of sealing back to Iruka Sensei. Iruka would be absolutely amazed at what he had seen in Naruto. He had seen how Naruto had changed and grown in all this time. Naruto did look a bit hesitant, as he felt as though Iruka would hate him. But Iruka would kneel before him and give him a hug. He would tell him that he was very proud of Naruto, proud of how hard he had worked, and he was sorry that he couldn't have done more for him. He would tell him that no matter what, he didn't view him as the demon fox. To him, he was Naruto Uzumaki, proud shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village. And with that, the two would embrace into a hug once again. After Mizuki was taken to jail, the scroll of sealing would be returned back to the third Hokage. As they had done so, Naruto would soon return home. He was extremely happy as he set his headband on his desk, for now his new journey had begun. At first, to become Hokage, that was his dream, and it was the dream that would remain. But now Naruto felt invigorated. He had been given a gift, a power that was never before seen. He felt that as long as he continued to grow and improve, this power would not only allow him to reach out for the future that he wanted, but it would allow him to protect those who were closest to him. For Naruto, he didn't want to just become the Hokage. He would not only become the greatest Hokage of all time, but there was another title that he wanted. A title that he would use and would stand on par with the Hokage. Naruto aimed to become the greatest Sorcerer Supreme of his world, as well as Hokage. And this is the start of the mystic adventures of Naruto Uzumaki. This concludes What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange? Naruto Mystic Adventures Part 1. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned, as next week we'll be getting back into our next set of stories, starting off with What If Issei Was the Shield Hero? Devil of the Shield Season 1 Part 2. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I am Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.